My God, how can this be happening now? David Wellington barked into the phone, his voice ricocheting off the marble walls of the 45th floor of Wellington Industries. The millionaire CEO paced like a caged animal inside his glass-walled office, his eyes glued to the street below where 3 sleek black cars had just pulled up. The Chinese delegation was arriving, right on time, and their official translator? Gone. A last-minute family emergency had pulled the plug on months of careful planning. In just 15 minutes, executives from China's most powerful tech conglomerate would be sitting in his conference room, ready to make a $200 million deal, an agreement that hinged on flawless communication. No misunderstandings. No apps. No excuses. Mr. Wellington, I've tried every translator in the city, Rebecca, his executive assistant, said breathlessly, one hand still pressing her phone tightly to her ear. No one is available for a meeting of this scale on such short notice. David tugged at the knot of his Italian tie, the silk suddenly strangling. Sweat prickled at his hairline. 20 years of blood, sweat, and corporate warfare had built Wellington Industries into a global powerhouse, and now it might all unravel over a damn language barrier. The Chinese were notoriously formal in their diplomatic business dealings. Improvisation was not part of the protocol. The absence of a qualified interpreter could be seen as a blatant insult. And then, soft as a breeze breaking a storm, came a voice from the corner of the room. "Excuse me, Mr. Wellington, but I speak fluent Mandarin." Silence fell, sharp and immediate. All eyes turned toward the sound. Standing just beyond the polished desk was Jasmine Parker, 28, holding a cleaning cloth in gloved hands. Dressed in the standard navy blue maintenance uniform, she looked every bit the invisible worker she had been for the last 3 years on the executive floors. Always present, always quiet, never noticed. The room stood still, the hum of the air conditioning now the loudest sound. Rebecca was first to break it with a scoffing laugh, clearly unsettled. "Jasmine, this isn't a joke. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar international deal." David studied the young woman, squinting as though trying to place her for the first time. "You speak Mandarin?" he asked, his tone laced with both skepticism and faint, desperate hope. "Mandarin, Cantonese, and a little Taiwanese," Jasmine replied without flinching, her posture steady and voice composed. "I studied Oriental linguistics at Howard University before I started working here." 3 years of cleaning offices had taught her more than how to scrub glass. She had absorbed boardroom strategies, executive language, subtle cues, and complex dynamics. Lessons learned not from textbooks, but from quietly observing the titans of industry in their natural habitat. Rebecca's amused expression darkened into one of irritation. "David, you can't be serious. A cleaning lady? Conducting the most important meeting of the year." David hesitated. There was something in Jasmine's voice, a quiet, unshakable confidence that couldn't be faked. "Prove it," he said suddenly. "Say something in Mandarin." Jasmine took a breath, then spoke, fluid, melodic, and unmistakably fluent. "Women hen rong xingzai zhili yu jin nin. Shi wong women de huzwa hui dailai huwe de jigwa." The cadence was elegant, the pronunciation flawless. Even David, who didn't understand a word, felt the weight of authority in her delivery. "What did you say?" he asked quietly. "That is an honor to meet you here, and we hope our cooperation will bring mutually beneficial results." Jasmine translated. "It's a respectful, standard business greeting in Chinese culture." Rebecca folded her arms, bristling with discomfort. "David, what do you think the Chinese executives will say when they see you brought a cleaning lady into their boardroom?" It's offensive. But Jasmine's calm didn't break. In her mind, a moment flashed like lightning, a memory. 6 months ago, she had overheard Rebecca crying in the executive restroom, speaking into phone about that black girl who hangs around the important meetings. Jasmine had pretended not to hear, but she remembered every single word. David stared at her now, his mind racing. He saw something in her eyes, intelligence, poise, strength. She had spent years listening, learning, absorbing, more than most of the overpaid suits who paraded through these halls every day. He made a decision. "You have 20 minutes to get yourself ready," he said sharply, ignoring Rebecca's gasp. Put on something appropriate. Meet me in the conference room. Jasmine didn't hesitate. She nodded once and slipped out of the office, her steps quick and purposeful. Behind her, Rebecca hissed, "You've lost your damn mind. When this backfires, it'll destroy your career." But David wasn't listening. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking like a CEO. He was thinking like a man who had just discovered that the most valuable people often go unnoticed until the moment they're needed most. What no one knew was that Jasmine had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone could have guessed. And Rebecca, so used to judging by title and appearance, was about to learn that underestimating someone could be the most fatal mistake of all. If this story of quiet resilience and sudden opportunity resonates with you, and you're curious to see how a cleaning lady could turn the tide in a high-stakes corporate showdown, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's more to come when hidden talent finally meets its chance to shine. 20 minutes later, the conference room held a thick, expectant silence. Jasmine stepped in, no longer in uniform. She wore a simple black dress borrowed from the receptionist, understated but professional. Her hair was pulled into a sleek bun. She held a notepad with poised fingers, just like the rest of them. Jesus Christ. Thomas. The CFO muttered under his breath, not bothering to hide his shock. Is that really her? Rebecca sneered, leaning toward another assistant. You can polish a piece of coal, but it's still coal inside, she whispered. The Chinese delegation had already arrived. 5 impeccably dressed executives stood in the gleaming glass-walled room, speaking in quiet Mandarin, taking in the sweeping view of Manhattan. David stepped forward to make the introductions. This is Jasmine Parker, he said evenly, choosing each word like a loaded card. Our international relations specialist for the Asian market. Mr. Chun, the delegation's leader, bowed politely. Jasmine returned the gesture with perfect grace, then addressed them in fluent Mandarin, thanking them for their time, praising their punctuality, and extending formal greetings according to strict cultural customs. Mr. Chun's face lit up with visible approval. This was no ordinary interaction. This was respect. This was recognition. And for Jasmine Parker, it was only the beginning. For the first 15 minutes of the meeting, Jasmine translated with clarity and finesse that left the room quietly astonished. She didn't merely recite words. She captured tone, intent, and cultural nuance. Even the light, carefully timed jokes from the Chinese executives were met with genuine laughter. Thanks to her flawless interpretations, the rhythm of the meeting unfolded with unexpected ease. And for the first time that day, David Wellington allowed himself to breathe. It felt as though, against all odds, disaster had been averted. But just as confidence was beginning to settle in the room, Rebecca struck. With a venomous smile curling across her lips, she leaned slightly forward. Jasmine, she said sweetly, too sweetly, perhaps we should explain to our guests your unique career path here at the company. David shot her a glare, sharp and clear, but she pressed on anyway. It's just so inspiring to see someone reinventing themselves like that. Moving up in life, so to speak. The sting wasn't in the words, but the tone. It was condescension thinly veiled as praise. Jasmine felt the familiar pull of shame clawing at her chest, a weight she had carried since the age of 18, when she dropped out of Howard University during her junior year. Her mother, a diabetic, had lost her job. Medical bills piled up. Jasmine had left academia to become a caretaker, a breadwinner, a cleaner, anything her mother needed. Her dreams hadn't died. They had been suspended. Life teaches us that opportunities can come in unexpected ways, she said evenly, her voice calm but dignified. Mr. Chun turned to watch her, his brow furrowing slightly. But really, she added, eyes locking with the delegation, who would have thought that someone who was cleaning these very rooms 3 years ago would now be sitting at this table? It really demonstrates how our company values diversity in all its forms. A silence followed, long and cold. Something in Mr. Chun's expression shifted. Not contempt, but discomfort. In his culture, hierarchy was a foundation of professionalism. Publicly drawing attention to an employee's past menial role, especially in a high-stakes business setting, could be interpreted as a loss of face for everyone involved. Jasmine felt the weight in her stomach grow heavier. David jumped in quickly. What Rebecca meant, he said, voice tight, is that we value talent, wherever we find it. But the damage was already done. Jasmine noticed it instantly. The warmth had drained from the room. The Chinese executives remained polite, still nodding and smiling when necessary, but their eyes had changed. She had become a curiosity, not a peer, a novelty in the middle of a boardroom negotiation. And in that quiet shift, something within her hardened. 3 years she had scrubbed floors and wiped glass tables while executives like Rebecca paraded through with their power suits and fragile egos. But in that time, she had been more than just an observer. She had been a listener, a silent archivist. She had cataloged every blunder, every whispered betrayal, every power play, especially Rebecca's, like the time she manipulated quarterly numbers to impress a client, or when she took credit for a junior employee's entire project, only for that person to be fired during the next round of budget cuts. Or the most damning, when she used confidential insider information to negotiate private consulting deals. Jasmine had seen it all, and more importantly, she had kept it. The meeting ended on a lukewarm note. The Chinese delegation offered a tentative agreement, an obvious diplomatic placeholder for maybe, the kind uttered when a better option might still present itself. As they exited, Rebecca collected her papers with exaggerated calm. Well, she said, smugness dripping from every word. That was interesting. Maybe next time we should be a little more transparent about our team's qualifications from the start. David's jaw clenched, fury burning just beneath the surface. But before he could speak, Jasmine stood up with quiet control. Rebecca, she said softly, though the new weight in her voice quieted the room. Mr. Chun mentioned something interesting before he left. Rebecca raised an eyebrow, tilting her head with performative curiosity. Oh, really? Like what? He said he was impressed with my fluency, Jasmine replied, but confused by the hierarchical dynamics in the room. She let her words hang in the air like smoke. He asked if I could call him later to clarify certain cultural aspects of our presentation. Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly. What aspects? Mainly why the person responsible for communicating the most critical parts of the deal wasn't introduced as the lead negotiator. Jasmine answered smoothly. In their culture, the person who speaks holds authority. Mr. Chun was unsure why our hierarchy didn't reflect that. A flicker of unease crossed Rebecca's face. Jasmine didn't press further. She didn't need to. The implications were already sinking in. 2 hours later, Jasmine was back in her uniform, pushing her cleaning cart down the executive hallway. But this time, every step was deliberate. For 3 years, she had been invisible, and in that invisibility, she had mapped the company's hidden veins, its secrets, its corruptions, and its rot. Look who's back where she belongs, Rebecca said loudly, just within earshot. She stood chatting with Jennifer from accounting, voice laced with fake cheer. After that little performance today, I think we all know where everyone really fits. Jasmine didn't stop. She didn't even blink. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was already replaying the last 3 years. Rebecca's open laptops left unattended, careless conversations on speakerphone, the confidential document she stuffed in the bottom drawer of her desk. You know what bothers me most? Rebecca continued, smiling for effect. David actually thought a cleaning lady could save a $200 million deal, as if cleaning toilets qualified her to sit with executives. Jasmine's phone vibrated gently in her pocket. She stepped around a corner and pulled it out. A message appeared. Chinese characters glowed softly on the screen. It was from Mr. Chun. Ms. Parker, I would like to speak with you privately about your future. Can we meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Mandarin Cafe, 42nd Street? I have a proposal you may find interesting. Her heart skipped. This wasn't just about language. This was about recognition. Jasmine understood now. Mr. Chun had seen through performance. He had seen her. That night, in her modest Brooklyn apartment. Jasmine opened a file on her computer she'd quietly compiled for over 2 years. It wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. Titled Wellington Industries Irregularities. It contained 63 pages of evidence. Printed emails Rebecca thought were deleted, audio logs captured by security systems during off hours, screenshots of spreadsheets, private notes, and, most damningly, photographs of documents showing that Rebecca had deliberately sabotaged 3 minority-owned companies to eliminate competition. She had lied, stolen credit, and abused her power to keep others small, especially black professionals who didn't fit her image of corporate acceptability. The next morning, at exactly 10 a.m., Jasmine arrived at Cafe Mandarin. She wore a clean, elegant outfit, modest but deliberate. Mr. Chun was already there, joined by Lisa Wong, the group's poised vice president of international development. Miss Parker. Mr. Chun began in English before effortlessly transitioning to Mandarin. Yesterday, I observed more than just your fluency. I saw your restraint, your strength under pressure. We're expanding operations in North America, and we need someone who understands both cultures intimately. Someone who has observed from the inside how American companies really operate. Lisa leaned in, sliding a business card across the table. It read, Parker and Associates International Consulting. Below was an offer, an annual salary 5 times what Jasmine earned at Wellington. We have one condition, Mr. Chun said, smiling knowingly. We'd like you to begin by helping us investigate discrepancies we've uncovered in Wellington's trade contracts. It seems there are violations of federal regulations that need clarification. Jasmine held the card tightly. For 3 years, she had been treated as part of furniture. Today, 2 of Asia's most influential business leaders were offering her not just a seat, but a platform. There's an emergency board meeting at Wellington tomorrow, Lisa added. The Chinese delegation has filed a formal complaint. You may want to attend. That night, Jasmine called her mother. Mom, she said, her voice soft. Remember when you told me that patience is a smart woman's most powerful weapon? Of course, honey. Why? I think I finally understand what you meant. As she hung up, Jasmine stood at her window, staring at the glittering Manhattan skyline. Tomorrow, Wellington Industries, and especially Rebecca, would learn that invisibility wasn't weakness. It was strategy, and they had given a master strategist 3 years of ammunition. They had no idea what she had become, because Jasmine hadn't just waited. She had watched. She had learned. And now she was ready. The next morning, the executive boardroom at Wellington Industries buzzed with a thick, silent tension. The air felt heavier than usual. David Wellington had called an emergency board meeting after receiving a damning report from the Chinese delegation. The report detailed serious contractual irregularities, violations so severe they could trigger a federal investigation. The stakes were no longer corporate. They were criminal. Rebecca strode into the boardroom like a woman born for confrontation. Her crimson suit screamed authority, and her stiletto struck the floor with calculated precision, echoing like a gavel with every step. She had rehearsed her narrative all night, sharpening her words to a blade. She was confident, convinced she could deflect the blame onto the cleaning lady David had foolishly inserted into a multi-million-dollar negotiation. Well, she began, addressing the 7 board members with clipped assertiveness, I imagine we're here to discuss yesterday's fiasco. As I warned, placing an unqualified employee in such a critical negotiation was reckless. And now, it's costing us $200 million. Before anyone could respond, the door opened with soft but unmistakable finality. Jasmine Parker entered, poised and composed in a sleek gray business ensemble. Not borrowed this time, but purchased with her signing bonus from the Chinese delegation. She carried a leather briefcase in one hand, her expression unreadable, her presence undeniable. I'm sorry I'm late, she said evenly, her voice measured, assured. I was finalizing some important information for the meeting. Rebecca's lips curled with visible irritation. With all due respect, David, I fail to see why she's here. This is an executive meeting. She's here, David replied coldly, because the Chinese delegation specifically requested her presence to clarify the nature of the accusations they've submitted. Jasmine opened her laptop with quiet authority. Mr. Chun approached me yesterday afternoon. She began, her tone clinical, with serious concerns regarding Wellington Industries' contracting practices. Specifically, evidence of bid rigging, unethical client interference, and sabotage of minority-led competing firms. Rebecca laughed, a sharp, high-pitched sound masking her unease. That's absurd. What kind of evidence could a cleaning lady possibly have about executive operations? Jasmine's response was a quiet, devastating smile. The kind of evidence you gather when you're invisible for 3 years, and people talk in front of you as if you don't exist. A flicker of panic surfaced in Rebecca's eyes for the first time. Jasmine connected her laptop to the projector. The screen came alive with the first exhibit, an internal email from Rebecca, dated 6 months earlier. This email, Jasmine said, her voice calm but precise, was sent to Mills Corporation. In it, confidential data from Johnson Company's proposal, our direct competitor at the time, was illegally disclosed to sabotage their bid. The room went still. Rebecca opened her mouth to protest, but Jasmine didn't pause. Next slide, please. The screen showed spreadsheets with redacted cost inflation figures. This document outlines how Ms. Rebecca Mason deliberately inflated costs on projects led by Black and Latino employees, leading to their cancellations, then falsely attributed these failures to poor performance. Board members leaned forward, their faces stricken with disbelief. A third slide displayed security footage timestamps paired with audio logs. This is a setup. Rebecca shouted, leaping to her feet. She's fabricating all of this out of resentment. Unfazed, Jasmine continued. The next clip is from the company's own security system, dated 8 months ago. She hit play. Rebecca's voice echoed through the speakers, chilling in its casual cruelty. We can't allow these types of people to think they belong in executive meetings. It's a matter of keeping the company's standards intact. Rebecca blanched. Everyone in the room turned toward her. She recognized the clip. It was a private conversation with Thomas about maintaining aesthetic consistency in hiring. She had said it. And now, there it was publicly broadcast. And this, Jasmine continued, her voice like silk over steel, was recorded just 2 weeks ago. The next audio played Rebecca instructing the front desk to discard resumes from applicants with names that sounded too ethnic. Mr. Johnson, a Black board member and company veteran, slowly leaned forward. Rebecca, is this true? That's taken out of context, she stammered, her polished demeanor cracking. Beads of sweat began to form on her brow. You don't understand the pressure I've been under to preserve the company's standards. Company standards, Jasmine interrupted softly, include ethics, integrity, and compliance with federal anti-discrimination laws, all of which you repeatedly violated over the last 18 months. David turned toward her, his face set in cold stone. You have 30 seconds to explain why you shouldn't be fired for cause and report it to the district attorney. Rebecca's eyes scanned the room for sympathy, for rescue, for anything. She found nothing. No one looked back at her. Just faces cast in quiet disapproval and disappointment. You're making a terrible mistake, she whispered hoarsely. She's just a resentful cleaning lady who... David cut in firmly, is our new director of international relations, and you are fired. The silence that followed was suffocating. Rebecca stood trembling, barely able to process how her 15-year career had collapsed in a matter of minutes. Your access will be revoked immediately, David said coldly. Security will escort you to gather your things. He paused. And Rebecca, considering the severity of the evidence presented, will be forwarding all documentation to the federal attorney's office. As security led her out, she looked over her shoulder one last time. Her eyes locked on Jasmine's. You may have won today, she hissed, but that doesn't change what you really are. Jasmine met her gaze without blinking. You're right, she said. I am exactly what I've always been, someone who watches, learns, and acts at the right moment. The difference is now I'm exactly where I belong. 3 hours later, after the board had formally appointed Jasmine to her new position, David pulled her aside. How did you do it? He asked, still stunned. 3 years of recordings, emails, documents. Jasmine allowed herself a genuine smile. When you're treated like furniture, people forget that furniture has eyes and ears. Rebecca underestimated the power of invisibility and overestimated the value of her arrogance. As she looked out from her new office on the 38th floor, the Manhattan skyline bathed in golden sunlight, Jasmine realized something profound. The best revenge wasn't tearing Rebecca down. It was building something so untouchable, so remarkable, that Rebecca's efforts to erase her became irrelevant. Her future was no longer something she watched others live. It was hers now, fully. 6 months later, Jasmine sat behind her sleek glass desk, reviewing multi-million-dollar contracts in Mandarin, Cantonese, and English. The office was hers now, her schedule packed, her authority unquestioned. "Jasmine," said Jennifer, now her personal assistant, poking her head through the door, "the South Korean delegation is here. They're excited to meet the woman who tripled our Asian business in 6 months." Through her panoramic window, Jasmine looked out at the same skyline she once viewed from the shadows. Now, as Director of International Relations, she was one of the most respected women in Manhattan corporate circles. With an annual salary of $300,000, she had secured her mother the best diabetes treatment available. She'd also completed her master's degree through Columbia's executive program. "What about Forbes next week?" Jennifer asked, scanning her planner. "Confirmed," Jasmine replied, adjusting her navy blazer, not out of obligation, but pride. "They're profiling me for the most influential young female executives issue." Across town, Rebecca sat in a small, cluttered apartment in Queens. Her Manhattan condo was long gone, swallowed by debt and legal fees. On the coffee table sat a mountain of medical bills and a stack of job rejections. A federal investigation had concluded with a $50,000 fine and a 5-year executive employment ban. Her name had become shorthand for corporate toxicity. That morning, she had seen Jasmine's smiling face on the cover of Business Week, flanked by Chinese executives. The headline read, "The Translator Who Revolutionized Global Business." Back at Wellington, David addressed the board once more. "Jasmine Parker didn't just salvage our Chinese deal," he said. "She opened doors to global markets we never thought we'd reach." Mr. Johnson stood to add a few words. "In my 40 years in corporate America," he said gravely, "I've rarely seen a transformation as extraordinary as Jasmine's. She's proven that true talent transcends color, class, and prejudice." Applause erupted around the room. Jasmine, seated modestly, thought back to the girl who once pushed a cleaning cart through these very hallways. That night, in her renovated Upper East Side apartment, Jasmine answered a call from her mother. "Honey, I saw your TV interview. The way you spoke about second chances, perseverance. I learned from the best," Jasmine replied, smiling. "You always said people can try to diminish us, but they can never diminish what we know or what we're capable of." During that interview, she had been asked about Rebecca. Did she harbor any resentment? Her answer had been crisp, graceful. "Rebecca gave me the greatest gift of all. She showed me exactly who I never want to become. Her arrogance taught me that real power comes from lifting others up, not stepping on them." 3 weeks later, Jasmine stood before 500 students at Howard University, announcing her new scholarship initiative. "No one should ever have to choose between their dreams and their family's needs," she told the crowd. The Second Chance program, partially funded by her own salary, had already awarded 20 full scholarships for the next semester. Rebecca watched the live stream from her apartment. For the first time in months, her tears weren't of self-pity, but of remorse. Back at Wellington, young interns now greeted Jasmine with admiration. Senior staff sought her mentorship. She had become not just a leader, but a symbol. "You know what fascinates me most?" David asked her during a private moment. "You had everything needed to destroy Rebecca personally, but you didn't. You chose to only expose what mattered professionally." Jasmine smiled. "The best revenge isn't destruction," she said. "It's building something so undeniable, so magnificent, that your enemies disappear into their own irrelevance." And she had done just that. Jasmine Parker had taken 3 years of silence, humiliation, and invisibility, and turned them into the greatest power move of her life. She had rewritten the rules, shattered the glass ceiling, and proved once and for all that real leadership isn't about who sits at the table. It's about who has the strength to rise, even when no one's watching. And now the world was watching.